Which is what if Naruto was banished and returned as the Uzumaki Emperor with a Jinchuriki Queen? Part 4. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Fire Country. Konoha Crater. Take Katsuyu. She might be able to help you, Tsunade told him as she held out a small slug. Naruto nodded as the two Toad Elders helped Slug into his inner pocket. Don't lose her. Naruto nodded again. Right. Ray-chan, Yugito spoke up, getting the cat's attention. Get Tsunade-sama out of here. She's in the way. The cat nodded and packed the last of the Sannin up. Good luck, was all the blonde Hokage said to them as she was placed on the cat's back and held in place by its tail, which had wrapped around her. Ray took off a moment later, heading towards the out edge of the crater where the rest of Konoha watched on. Let's go wild, Naruto's voice echoed through the crater of Konoha. There was a booming sound as Yugito shot forward, indicating she had crossed the sound barrier. A stream of jet blue flames were erupting from her feet, propelling her towards where the 7 Akatsuki members stood. Her target was Konan. Kuchio's no jutsu, Animal whispered as she placed her hand on the ground in front of the Akatsuki members. In a poof of smoke, a large rhino appeared, charging towards Naruto. It paid no heed to Yugito as the two passed each other, with its only target being Naruto. Konan, Pain said as he saw the Neko Sennin approach. The blue-haired beauty nodded and jumped as she sprouted paper wings from her back. Hi no ya, Yugito called out as she let loose a flame-covered arrow at the female Akatsuki agent. She evaded but was unprepared for the follow-up attack at close range, Keizuki. While the two females were going at it, Naruto and Pain stood staring each other down across the battlefield. The rhino was still bulldozing towards Naruto, but he never took his eyes off of the diva path. When the rhino was about to hit the blonde teen, Sakino slammed into the side of the massive beast and knocked it away. A large amount of chakra began to gather at the fox's mouth as she jumped high into the air. Gobiko Amari, the fox declared as the ball suddenly exploded downwards and hit the unsuspecting rhino. It struck the creature in its back and exploded downwards in a brilliant destructive of light. Needless to say, the rhino was completely destroyed and the place where it stood no longer existed, now being just a hole in the ground going straight down. The hole was about 10 meters wide, but the drop was just 3 miles if anyone were to try and climb down into it. Diva Path watched what had happened to his rhino through narrowed eyes, and a split second later Animal slammed both of her hands down on the ground, Suin Kuchio's no jutsu. 2 puffs of smoke soon followed, accompanied by 2 large creatures charging out of it towards the Kitsune Sennin. One was a dog while the other was a ram. Each of them was the same height as the rhino and they were both barreling at him. Fukasaku and Shima then jumped off from Naruto's shoulders in unison, kept their eyes on the summons. Senpo. Kawazunaki, they said as their voices echoed through the air, piercing the eardrums of both summons. Naruto shot forward between the 2 now dazed creatures and charged towards where Pain stood. Just then Kyuubi and Nibi shot forward, also intent on destroying the 2 summoned creatures. They wrapped their tails around the disoriented 2 and flung them high into the air, all the while charging their respective attacks at their mouths. Hubiko Amari, Kyuubi roared as the chakra sphere at its mouth exploded at the dog creature. Nekomata Gukakyu, Nibi exclaimed as the ball of pure fire accelerated upwards at the giant ram. The 2 summons were instantly vaporized in the skies above Konoha. Naruto slapped the whirlpool symbol on the back of his wrist and instantly his mother's sword, his sword, flashed into existence. He grasped its handle as he drew near Pain. Diva hadn't taken his eyes off of him during the entire confrontation between their summons and so easily dispatched his Preta path to intercept him. As Naruto and Preta drew nearer to each other, time seemed to slow between them until Naruto disappeared in a poof of smoke, surprising Pain, who hadn't taken his eyes off of Naruto's form since the fight began. When did he? Pain thought as Naruto suddenly dropped down from the sky behind him, sword in hand. Gotcha, shouted the Kitsune Sennin as he swung his sword from the side. Preta didn't have any time to react as his head was severed from his body in one clean swing. It's a good thing I took this one out early. Pa did say it could absorb any ninjutsu. Naruto twirled the sword in his hand for a second before turning and pointing it at Diva and the remaining 3 paths. That's 2. He just took out another one and it didn't even look like he was trying. Hiba exclaimed at seeing the battle in progress. Neji nodded. I noticed it before. The Naruto that saved Tsunade and charged at Pain was just a clone. The real one was standing on some kind of spinning chakra plate above us, waiting for his moment to strike, the Hyuga explained. What's with the sword? It's beautiful, Tenten commented, even though she could barely see it from this distance. That's the sword of the whirlpool, Tsunade told them, having been brought to the group by Rei, who had remained with them. It was his mother's sword back when she was younger. I haven't seen it in a long time. I assumed it was lost when she died, but clearly Naruto was able to find it, she continued. However, the Naruto resealed the whirlpool sword after slapping the back of his hand again and suddenly began making hand seals, a lot of hand seals. Now what's he doing? Pain asked in thought as he felt the wind suddenly start to pick up around him. Them. I'm going to kill every last one of you, Pain. Naruto shouted as he brought his hands to his side and suddenly a ball of wind began to form in each of his palms. He brought both balls together and shouted, Futon, Kamikaze no Jutsu. The moment the two balls touched, a large tornado seemed to shoot out from his arms and accelerate towards where Pain's body stood. What is that? Pain thought as he scrambled his bodies to get out of the way. The tornado struck where they had just been standing and everything else within its 20-meter range, including the animal path. She was ripped apart from the constant friction and left as nothing more than a broken corpse on the battlefield. That's a very dangerous jutsu, Pain thought as he examined the now all but destroyed body of the animal path. That's 3, Naruto told him. He's taking them out one after the other, Hyuga commented, whistling at the power of the jutsu his former comrade had used. That jutsu just now, that was easily an S-ranked jutsu, but I've never seen or even heard of a jutsu like that before, Kakashi said, unsure. What's worse is the amount of chakra need to pull it off. I was able to copy it with my Sharingan, but I would never be able to use it. The strain would kill me, the copy nin explained. No one noticed the almost non-existent scowl on Sasuke's face. This isn't fair. How can he know such a jutsu? Who taught him it, and how could he be able to do it without suffering any kind of loss, while I would not be able to physically use it without self-harm? It must be the Kyuubi's doing. Of course it would give the Dobi anything he wanted. He always gets everything handed to him. Note. I want everyone to remember this sentence, thought every time you read the manga. He's running low on chakra. He must have used up half of his reserves on that jutsu just now, Pain realized as he sent the human path to strike at the Kitsune Sennin. Damn it, Sage Mode is almost out of juice, Naruto growled in thought as he tried to jump away from the approaching human path. Thinking fast, he created 2 spinning chakra spheres in his hands and slammed them into the ground, Rasenrangan. Dust shot up, blanketing the entire area in a cloud of smoke, making Pain realize what had happened. He's created a smokescreen. After a moment, however, the dust cleared, but Naruto was nowhere in sight. Where did he go? A flash of light from above caught his attention and he looked up, but was too late to stop Naruto's attack on the human path. Not enough time. Futon. Rasen Shuriken, Naruto exclaimed as threw the spinning shuriken of wind and power down on the human path's position. It struck human and immediately expanded, engulfing everything within its range as Naruto and Pain propelled themselves away from it to avoid the jutsu's ability to suck everything in range into it. Human was ripped apart from the constant barrage of attacks done by the jutsu until there was nothing left of him. He had been completely vaporized, leaving nothing behind as the juts finally exploded in great blast of wind. That's 4, Naruto said while trying to steady his heavy breathing from doing so many high-level attacks one after the other. Impressive. As expected of a fellow student of Jiraiya-sensei, Pain commented as the dust from the attack settled. Jiraiya-sensei, Naruto asked, unsure what he meant by that. Jiraiya-sensei was my teacher, the same as he was yours. This makes me your fellow pupil. We should be able to understand each other. Our sensei wanted peace, Pain stated knowingly. That's bullshit. It's true he wanted peace, but take a look around. Naruto yelled as waved his arms all around at the crater that was Konoha. How can you call this peace? He shouted in rage. Why in the hell are you doing this anyway? My answer won't change anything, Pain said simply. Well, I want you hear it. Why are you trying so desperately to get your hands on the Biju? Why? Naruto asked the very same question that had always plagued him. My goal is something not even sensei was able to achieve. I intend to bring peace through justice, Pain answered. Naruto just stared on, angered by the Akatsuki leader's answer. How can you say that after everything you've done? Ero Sennin, Konoha and all of the Jinchuriki. You say that everything you've done to them was justified. By now Naruto's eyes were beginning to flash red. What the hell is wrong with you? Then what do you want? Pain asked. I want to kill you. That's what I want, Naruto answered almost immediately. Naruto, Yugito thought as she looked on from the skies above. Diva let a small smile slip onto his face at the answer. I see, that's wonderful. That is your justice, but let me ask you something. Do you think only a select few are to speak about peace and justice? Naruto calmed himself and asked, what do you mean? Konoha, Suna, Kumo, Iwa, Hiri, they've all grown too big. They are all set in their ways. They care about nothing but themselves and their own peace and justice. Pain stated and saw Naruto had narrowed his eyes again. They go to war constantly. Their peace is a result of their violence against the other, smaller villages. In each of the shinobi wars my home has been destroyed. In the last war my family were killed, and soon after a very dear friend of mine was killed because of Konoha. The major villages always drag the smaller ones into their conflicts, never thinking about the lives of their allies. They think they are nothing more than figures on paper. Naruto remained silent as he thought the conversation he had with his sensei long ago. Flashback no jutsu begin. Even I can tell hatred is spreading, Jiraiya said sitting in a lotus position. Hatred? Naruto asked confused. The Gamma Sennin scratched the back of his head. I want to do something about it, but I don't know what, but I believe that the day will come when people truly understand each other. Naruto smiled trying not to feel overwhelmed. That sounds hard. Jiraiya shrugged. If I can't find the answer, it will be up to you to do it. Naruto gave him his best salute. Okay, if that's what you want I can't refuse. Flashback no jutsu end. You and I are the same. We are both working towards the peace Jiraiya spoke of. The justice I have meted out against Konoha is exactly the same as the justice you are trying to mete out against me Namikaze Naruto, Pain told him. You know the pain of loss and you are working for your justice just the same as I do for mine, spoke the Akatsuki leader having kept his eyes on the blonde throughout their conversation. People are driven to revenge in the name of justice and so it becomes a chain of hatred. If you read a bit of history you will know that whatever the future brings people will never understand each other. The shinobi world is ruled by hatred. How can you possibly bring peace when the world is consumed by hatred? Naruto closed his eyes for a moment as he thought on his answer. I don't have an answer, not yet, but I will. That's a promise. You are foolish. I created Akatsuki in order to gather the Biju and turn them into the most powerful weapon in existence, Pain stated, surprising Naruto and everyone who was listening. This weapon will allow me to break the chain of hatred. This weapon will be far more powerful than what I used to destroy Konoha. It will be able to destroy an entire nation in an instant. When it is used the world will know true pain and the fear caused by the weapon will bring stability to the world. That's not peace. That's nothing but using fear to control people. Naruto shouted in rage at such an idea. And yet it will stop people from fighting. It will break the chain of hatred for a time. Then once the pain is healed people will begin fighting again. This time however they will use the weapon themselves and so it will continue for the rest of time. That is my wish. Can you see peace? Pain's eyes seemed to bear into him. You're clinging to one twisted sense of peace bastard, Naruto growled as he made a hand seal. And you're really starting to piss me off. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, two clones popped into existence beside him. A few seconds later they had already channeled the chakra needed for his jutsu, Futon, Rasenshuriken. Diva narrowed his eyes as he saw the chakra shuriken sail towards him through the air. Just before it hit however a completely restore Preta path jumped down directly in between Diva and the jutsu. It took a few seconds before Preta completely absorbed the Rasenshuriken but nevertheless Pain's plan worked. However he missed crucial detail. The Naruto he had been talking to was a clone, which he realized when it poofed out of existence. The Naraka path suddenly looked up at the sky and was unable to dodge the oncoming attack Naruto had sent at him. Cho Udama Rasengan. Sage mode deactivated. Needless to say the Naraka path was defeated, along with everything within 300-foot radius. Naruto came walking out of the smoke dragging the all but destroyed body. He threw it at Diva's feet and said with a glare, for the record, that's 5 of you I've killed. You say my peace is a lie yet you do not have an answer yourself, Pain said seemingly not caring that another of his bodies and quite possibly his most valuable had been destroyed. You have done well to force me to go this far however it no longer matters as I have already won this fight, said the Diva path. Oh and why's that? Naruto said as he glared. You're out of power, Pain said simply. It was true, his sage mode had shut down because of the high-level jutsus he had been using continuously since the fight started. That was the weakness of the Fox sage mode. As soon as you ran out of power it would shut down and you couldn't get it back until your natural chakra reserves could recharge. Chakra pills wouldn't work so that left only one way to recharge the sage mode. He couldn't use chakra while his sage mode was recharging. That left him open to attack, a lot. Yugito's cat sage mode actually had the same weakness as well but she didn't have that many chakra draining jutsus in her arsenal so she could remain in sage mode for a lot longer than him. Anyway back to the fight. Diva shot forward with 2 of his chakra disruption blades drawn and ready to gut him. Naruto made a hand seal then remembered, damn I forgot. I can't use any jutsu while I'm recharging. He groaned as he slapped his hand on the whirlpool symbol thus releasing his sword. Alright then I'll just have to improvise. That sword won't help you here, Pain said as he lunged with both of his blades at the ready. Naruto parried the first strike and made to counterattack only to find that his opponent had sidestepped and was bringing his other sword to stab his shoulder. Naruto twirled his sword around and narrowly deflected the blow as it came. Diva then tried to swinging both of his swords down on him in the shape of an X. Naruto brought up his sword into the center of the attack and held it back. Your kenjutsu is impressive. However, Diva suddenly twisted on both of his swords and with a screeching echo of metal move against metal as Naruto's whirlpool sword was forced out of his hands and sent clambering to the floor not too far away. You still have yet to master Kenjutsu, Diva said as he made to stab Naruto in the shoulder and disable him. Naruto's eyes widened. I'm out of time. However, at that moment fate decided to cut him some slack. Sage mode reactivated. Shunpo no Jutsu. There was a flash of yellow as Naruto appeared behind Diva and delivered a monstrous headbutt to Pain's face. Diva was sent flying back before being left sprawled on the ground not too far away. That was a close one. Too close. He almost had me there. Thankfully he had already thought up a new plan of attack and so made a hand seal, futon, daitapa. Now what's he doing? Pain thought as Diva stood once again with Preta at his side. Naruto's jutsu had sent a cloud of dust across the area. He's not using the same plan again as he. Hundreds of Narutos suddenly burst from the cloud and barreled towards them. What is he planning? Bunshin Daibakua. The large number of clones shouted when they were close enough. They exploded a moment later but Preta absorbed the blasts but was unprepared for the real Naruto emerging from the ground below him while he was preoccupied by the clones with his sword in hand. Naruto sliced upwards cutting straight through Preta's entire body in one clean motion. It fell a moment later as Naruto rested his sword at his side once more. Pant, hey, technically, that's 6, Naruto said between breaths with a grin. He stood up straight and started making hand seals again, and now I'll finish it. He charged the 2 wind balls in his hand and brought them together, futon, kamikaze no jutsu. Diva's gaze was unwavering as the large tornado came crashing at him, pain. Shinra Tensei. Naruto held the jutsu for another 5 seconds before cutting off the power and let the jutsu die out. Dust and smoke had flooded the area between the two and as more of it cleared it left nothing but a large gouged out terrain. When the last of the smoke cleared the Diva path could be seen standing in the center of the gouged out terrain. Behold the might of God, Pain declared as he stood seemingly unharmed. What the hell is he? Naruto thought as sweat began to drip down his face. Shinra Tensei, Pain shouted as he thrust out his hand towards him. Naruto was suddenly blown back by a seemingly invisible force and sent crashing into the far end of the crater's wall with a monstrous impact. What the hell was that? Naruto, Fukasaku shouted in worry. Kyuubi, Nibi, help him, Yugito shouted as she continued to dodge the numerous papers. We know, Kyuubi shouted back as he made to slam his open paw down on the Akatsuki leader. Before he could crush him however Pain jumped high above the fox's head. Stay still vermin. I've got him, Nibi said as she tried to catch him with her tails but sadly missed. Let me show you the might of God, Pain said as he held out both of his arms towards both summoned bosses. Shinra Tensei, there was a sudden crack in the ground as both Kyuubi and Nibi were blown away. How? He shouldn't have been able to affect us with that jutsu alone unless, our power is still sealed away so we can't stand against that jutsu as we are now, Kyuubi growled in thought as both he and Nibi crashed hard into the outer wall of the crater with incredible force. Even the Kyuubi and the Nibi have fallen before the might of God, Pain declared as landed in the center of the crater again. He took note of Naruto just barely climbing to his feet at the edge of the crater and brought his hand up to where the blonde stood, Bansho Tenon. Naruto suddenly found himself being pulled towards Pain at an alarming pace. His eyes widened when Pain brought up his left hand and formed a fist all the while gravity still pulled him towards the Diva path. Naruto barely registered the punch that was delivered to his face even as he was sent sprawling across the ground. Pain had flooded his senses. Like every bone in his body had turned to mush but he fought down the pain and stood with anger overpowering the pain. Bastard! Naruto shouted in anger as he turned only to face Shinra Tensei. The ground around Naruto cracked as his body felt like it had been torn apart but still remained in one piece. Pain drew one of his chakra disruption blades and before Naruto could even realize it he was stabbed through the shoulder by Pain. The blade pierced through the front of his body and out of the back forcing him to grunt in pain. He coughed up some blood as Pain pulled the sword out and held out his hand to finish the job. Shinra Tensei, Naruto let out a barely audible grunt before he fell back onto the floor with an echoing slam. Pain then threw several long spear-like chakra disruption blades into the air above them where they remained hovering. This is the end Kitsune Sennin, was all Pain said. Naruto. 3 voices rang out. The blades struck, and blood splattered on the unforgiving ground. All was silent. Drip, drip, drip. What just happened didn't register in the minds of anyone that had been watching or even Naruto himself. Yugito was standing over him. She was covering him. She had protected him from Pain's attack. She was bleeding, a lot. Yugito. Naruto shouted as he fought down his own pain and grabbed her as she fell. Pain's chakra disruption blades littered her body but she didn't seem to mind. What the hell were you thinking? She smiled weakly up at him. She coughed slightly. I couldn't let you die. Not after everything you've done for me, she whispered. Why? He asked as tears began to form at the edge of his eyes. She smiled up at him. Idiot, Cough, cough, are you really that dense, Naruto? It's because I fell in love with you, you reckless idiot. He didn't know what to say to that. They're beaten, I'm coming to you, Conan said to Pain. The Akatsuki leader nodded. I should be able to finish things here. Conan nodded and dissolved into papers, leaving the three alone in the crater. Yugito, come on, stay with me, Naruto said as her eyes slowly closed. Pain looked on and commented, this actually reminds me of when Konoha killed my parents for simply being home. Don't worry, she's not dead. I need her alive, she's one of my precious hosts after all. Shut up, Naruto growled as he laid her on the ground, removed the chakra blades. He stood shaking slightly with his shoulders moving up and down, signifying his stressed breathing. You'll pay for this. He turned swiftly and took a few steps away from her, with his eyes now having turned red. I'll kill you. Red chakra exploded from Naruto's body and wrapped around him. Pain's eyes widened slightly, having just realized that this was the first time he had seen any form of demonic power from either of the two. A column of black chakra consumed the area where Naruto stood, and just as soon as it appeared, it disappeared to reveal the silhouette of a four-tailed demon chakra fox. It looks like his anger has triggered the fox's full powers, Pain thought as he narrowed his eyes at the demon in front of him. Do you hate me? He asked. Do you really think people can understand each other like this? He continued. The fox roared in anger. Oh shit, Hiba gulped when he saw the monstrous chakra fox. This is very bad, Sakura said, remembering the last time she saw Naruto like this. Where's Yamato? Kakashi asked, knowing his seal tags would be ineffective right now. He's on a mission with Sai and Anko, Tsunade answered as she gritted her teeth. Why now of all times? I must get Yugito-chan out of harm's way. Sakino thought as hefted the Neko Sennin onto her back with her tails and took off towards where Rei and the Konoha 11 were at. Shockwaves rippled across the crater as the four-tailed Naruto slammed his Yuki-covered fist down on the ground. When the dust cleared, Pain could be seen standing where he before seemingly unharmed. Suddenly Pain shot forward and drew one of his chakra disruption blades as he drew near. This isn't going to be easy, Pain thought as Naruto flicked one of his tails at the diva path, only for it to dodge and strike at the demon vessel's face. Naruto was knocked back, but just a second later a large mass of chakra in the shape of another body erupted from his chest and slashed at Pain. Pain saw the danger, however, and withdrew before he had his head cut off and jumped back several feet as Naruto recovered from the blow and returned to a human shape. Close combat is suicide against someone like him, Pain thought as he saw the fox. Suddenly Naruto puffed his chest out and a large mass of chakra erupted from it. What now? The chakra took the shape of a large hand and crashed down in front of him, making him take a step back. A moment later the chakra retracted, pulling Naruto across the distance between the two and bringing him crashing down on where Pain stood. His Yuki-covered fist hit the ground just as Pain jumped out of the way and sent a massive shockwave across the land. I have to take him seriously or I'll be killed, thought the Akatsuki leader as he touched back down on the now upturned ground. Pain raised his hand towards Naruto almost immediately and called out, Shinra Tensei. Even with the Yuki weighing him down, Naruto was blown back by the attack and crashed hard into the edge of the crater's outer wall. All was silent for a moment until a gut-wrenching screech filled the air. The fox roared as dozens of red and blue balls of chakra were released from his body and floated in the air. After Sakino had placed the unconscious Yugito down on the ground near the group of Konoha nins, her eyes widened upon seeing what her summoner was about to do. She turned swiftly and shouted to the Hokage, you need to get the people behind Pain out of there right now. Why? Tsunade asked the summoned fox. Naruto-kun's about to use a very powerful attack. Your people will be killed even if he hit Pain with it. Sakino said as a barely controlled shout. Get them out of there now. Yonbaiko Amari, Naruto called out as he belched out the large mass of chakra at high velocity towards Pain. The Diva Path saw it coming, however, and with slightly fearful eyes raised his hand to stop the attack. Shinra Tensei. The chakra projectile detonated just before it hit Pain, but the resulting direct blast covered Pain's location and stretched another 20 miles behind him. The blast tore through the side of the crater and created a long canyon for about 15 miles. Konoha's wall on that side had been knocked down from the blast, and all that remained was a long gorge between two sections of land. The dust cleared and Pain could be seen again, but this time he was standing on one knee, breathing slightly hard. This didn't last long, however, as he stood once again seemingly unhurt, though a bit exhausted, but nothing serious. You, why won't you just die? Naruto shouted as more chakra exploded from within him. Two more tails formed on his shroud along with a set of bones which made him look like he had a skeleton covering his body. He roared again, sending shockwaves through the air as the facial bones formed around his face. Gee, there are 6 tails. Hiba shouted in surprise, which mirrored the others' disbelief. This is bad. This is very bad, Ino said as she shivered from the oppressive aura the fox gave off. Nissan has held this back for so long, Konohamaru trailed off as he watched. He's lost control though. Everyone turned when they heard the voice and saw both of the Toad Elders had climbed up to where they stood. Are you sure? Sakura asked, slightly hoping that he hadn't. Fukasaku nodded sadly. He's acting on instinct now. Take a look. He nodded down into the crater. Inside the six-tailed fox a beautiful green necklace glowed and large wood-like objects burst out in an attempt to stop the demon chakra. The fox. Naruto however just thrust his fist into his chest and pulled out the necklace before crushing it in his hand, creating a small shockwave from the resulting power spike. Was that some kind of seal? Pain thought, confused at seeing the necklace. My grandfather's necklace is. Tsunade trailed off at seeing its fate. Part of her was relieved that it had been destroyed so that no one would fall under its curse again, but another part of was saddened for losing another piece of her grandfather. Why did the seal not activate before when Naruto was using four tails? Kakashi asked. The seal that was placed on the necklace was only set to activate if Naruto lost control. He didn't lose control of his four-tailed form, but he did when that number increased to 6, Fukasaku answered knowingly. The seal was only capable of suppressing 4 tails of power at the most. 6 tails however, he trailed off as they knew what he meant. Dobi, Sasuke thought as he watched on. Though he wouldn't admit it, he was always afraid to fight Naruto when he used Kyuubi's chakra. That was the reason he suppressed the Kyuubi while it was inside Naruto 7 months ago before Naruto was banished. He had become even more wary of the blonde after discovering that he was able to match Orochimaru at full strength while Sasuke had only managed to kill the hubby's Sennin because his body was already in a weakened state. There was a sudden echoing bang as the six-tailed Naruto dashed towards him at a very alarming pace. He's faster than before. The chakra is no longer weighing him down. What's going on here? Pain thought as he was barely able to bring his arms up in time to counter-attack, Shinra Tensei. Naruto had planted 4 of his tails into the ground prior to Pain's attack, thus allowing him to shrug off the blow and not be blown away. The fox roared as its skeleton fist connected with the diva's face. What strength! The power behind that one blow, Pain thought as he crashed into the side of the crater. Naruto touched down right in front of him while he was already charging another attack. Oh no, he's about to. Rokubako Ima, Bansho Tenin. Pain interrupted as a large rock slammed into the fox from the side. This of course forced Naruto to lose concentration on his Onijutsu. And the world was engulfed in light. Wow, Tenten exclaimed as she covered her eyes. Holy shit, Hiba shouted as the massive explosion of chakra lit up the side of the crater on the opposite side to where they stood. Damn it, Tsunade grunted as she saw the blast die down. That wasn't even fully charged either, Fukasaku whispered as he saw the new crater that had been created beside Konoha's own crater. Yugito groaned from the ground as her eyes started to flutter open. Naruto. Hey, she's waking up, Rei said, catching Sakino's attention along with everyone else's. The diva path stood with his Akatsuki cloak all but destroyed as he glared at the grinning chakra fox who stepped around the large rock that separated them. His strength has exceeded my expectations. I can't win like this. I will have to use that jutsu if I even want to survive this, Pain thought as he turned and jumped away out of newly created crater. Rokubako Amari, he heard from behind as he attempted to dodge. Well, at least I know he's following me, Pain thought as he narrowly dodged and the attack hit the tree just ahead of him. The sound of another explosion soon followed the blast of light in the distance as yet another one of Naruto's attacks was used. Meanwhile Sakura finished healing Yugito and she looked up at her personal summon. What's happened? She asked. Naruto-kun has released 6 tails worth of power and lost control. Pain's currently running away from him but Naruto-kun appears to be pursuing him, Rei informed her. Yugito gritted her teeth as she tried to stand. I have to stop him. You're in no condition to do anything right now, Rei told her as she wrapped her tail around the blonde teenager. Damn it, Yugito growled through gritted teeth. Rokubako Amari, another ball of compressed destruction exploded near where Pain stood after it crazed him. He nearly got me with that one. Behind them the terrain was littered with craters and canyons stretching for miles. Neither cared for collateral damage but Naruto didn't look like he was going to stop anytime soon. Diva Path should be close enough now, Pain thought as he stopped and made a hand seal. He turned swiftly and concentrated his gravity manipulation into a single compressed sphere, Shibaku Tensei. I'd rather not use this but, I have no choice, he thought as he hurled the gravity ball into the sky above them. The cubified Naruto looked up at the ball as he suddenly felt the gravity of the world around him shift and pull the ground out from around him. The earth itself was ripped open as large masses of earth were pulled up and engulfed the ball. This continued for several more seconds with the miniature moon slowly getting bigger. Eventually the ground under Naruto was being pulled up also along with the fox. The chakra fox seemed to see the danger and started charging his attack again, Rokubako Amari. The chakra projectile hit the underside of the miniature moon and exploded in a torrent of light. however it remained relatively intact and Naruto could do nothing as he landed on it. More rocks. Boulders came a few moments later and buried Naruto inside of the hole he had created for himself in the miniature moon. It's over, Pain thought, breathing hard from the strain of using such a high-level technique. Crack. The side of the moon seemed to explode outwards slightly. That's impossible. Suddenly a large, enormous fox with 8 tails burst out from the surface of the moon. He broke out of Shippuden Tensei with brute force. At this rate I'll have to create a bigger one. He caught sight of the fox charging another attack, though this time the chakra projectile looked a lot bigger. Oh no. Hachibiko Amari, was all the warning he was going to get as the attack exploded downwards in a torrent of light. Shinra Tensei. Pain called out in hopes of surviving the blast. When the light died down, the land around Pain no longer looked like it was capable of supporting life. A line, canyon stretched from where he had been standing all the way to base of a nearby mountain. The fox, who was still trapped on Shippuden Tensei, stared down on where Pain stood, shakily breathing hard. Unreal. Pain trailed off in thought as tried to maintain his jutsu. Suddenly, however, the fox stopped moving as its eyes became lifeless. What now? The fox closed its eyes as it began to glow slightly until it illuminated the sky with its light. Mindscape. Shinigami seal. Naruto was on his knees grabbing his head as the seal on his now bare stomach was distorted. Memories echoed through his mind with each passing moment, making him lose further control. You reckless idiot. Yugito. The water at his feet was bubbling around him. Who would want this guy? He's a total idiot. He shakily stood as the water began to rise. Please. Who would date this idiot? He's reckless. Gets into more trouble than anyone I've ever met and is a pervert. If it wasn't for the fact that he's saved my life, I would have gladly remained in Kumo instead of staying with him on this crazy ride. He whispered as the memories flashed through his mind like images. Thanks for waking me, Naruto. So, he said as under his breath as he sluggishly walked towards the seal. I couldn't let you die. Not after everything you've done for me. Sorry, Naruto finished as he grasped at the seal paper on the cage. It's because I fell in love with you, you reckless idiot. Goodbye, he whispered as he took a hold and his arm was stopped. You shouldn't do that, Naruto, said one Namikaze Minato who had grabbed the teenager's arm, preventing him from removing the seal. Dad, Mindscape. Shinigami seal. The Yondaime Hokage. Namikaze Minato turned swiftly and picked up his son before carrying him away from the seal paper which protected the Kyuubi's power. The seal is set so that if 8 tails are released, I'd appear within your consciousness. I hoped you never would have to use it, but I looked forward to seeing how much you had grown, so I guess you could call it even. Minato said as he set Naruto down on the floor. Dad, Naruto asked as he took a step away from the man. Minato nodded. Sorry about dropping in like this, but I can't sit back and let you ruin your life like this. Dad, Naruto trailed off, shaking his head slightly. He suddenly lunged forward without warning and buried his fist into his father's stomach. You idiot. Minato grunted in pain from the blow as Naruto seemed to burst into tears before him. Why did you have to seal the fox inside your own son? Do you know how much trouble it's caused me? I don't know whether to be happy or pissed off right now. Minato recovered after a moment and smiled sadly. The Yondaime sighed. Naruto, how old are you now? Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes as he sobbed out. 16. Minato smiled sadly. 16 I'm having a bit of trouble with that. To me you were just born this morning. He looked down slightly as he continued. I'm sorry, I've done nothing but cause you pain. Naruto had calmed down by now and wiped away the last of his tears. It's fine, I guess I just needed to get that out of my system. Minato just smiled at that. Yeah. Your mother was the same way, she'd hit me too for making things difficult. Naruto chuckled slightly, remembering his encounter with his mother's clone. As for the reason I sealed half of the fox's power inside you, I believed you would be able to use its power should your situation ever require it, and there's another reason. Naruto stared at him as he trailed off, trying to find the words. You mean because of Kyuubi's former summoner? Yeah, him. The one that controlled Kyuubi when he attacked Konoha 16 years ago. Minato nodded in confirmation. He's a very powerful shinobi. It would be suicidal to fight him without some form of special power. He continued, remembering his fight with the man. I believe he'll attack Konoha again. He might even attack the entire world. It's well within his power, the Yondaime finished. Naruto shook his head at that. Konoha's has already been destroyed. Minato nodded in understanding. Yeah, I saw, from the seal. Naruto looked up at him surprised. I know about Jiraiya too. Was Pain the one who sent the fox to attack Konoha before? Asked the Kitsune Sennin. No, not him. Do you remember the Akatsuki member you fought? The one with the mask? Minato asked knowingly. Flashback no jutsu begin. Naruto grabbed a hold of the older woman's shoulders and asked in an almost frightened tone, what was the summoner's name? Please tell me. Kushina shook her head. I don't know, we never got his name. We didn't even see his real face, he always wore a mask. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto had only met one Akatsuki member who wore a mask, the one he couldn't seem to hit with anything other than his mother's sword. Yeah, I remember him, Naruto said, remembering his little skirmish with Akatsuki a month ago. Back before the attack, he saw through everything I did. He's no ordinary shinobi. He's easily one of the strongest men alive. Pain's probably being used by him, Minato said, sadly recalling his own battle with the seemingly untouchable man. But Pain hates Konoha. His own village was destroyed the same way. Naruto shouted, trying to understand what he had been told. That's right, and Pain is being used because of that fact, Minato told him. Being used? Are you telling me that this guy with the mask is the one responsible for everything that's happened? Is he the reason there is no peace? Naruto asked almost desperately. Yes, he's the one responsible, but it's people's hatred that is the reason there is no peace, Minato said sadly. Trying to save the things you love breeds war. As long as love exists, there will always be hatred, and ninjas will be used by that hatred. People's hatred will just create another creature like Pain. That's just the way things are, he finished. Then what do I do? Naruto asked as he clenched his fists. What can you do? Maybe as long as the ninja system exists there can never be true peace or order. Pain asked you about peace, but it's hard to find an answer, Minato told him sadly. Naruto didn't say anything to that, but instead just stared at him wide-eyed. Naruto. What's wrong? It can't be that easy, Naruto said, trying to calm himself and not hyperventilate. But to do something like that I would need the cooperation of every nation. The details would have to be hammered out completely with no gaps, but overall I think this plan of mine might actually work. Naruto calmed himself down and breathed. Naruto, Minato asked concerned. Dad, you're a genius, was the first thing the Sennin said, having turned back to his father. Minato raised an eyebrow in surprise. I am. Naruto nodded with a grin that threatened to split his face. You said that as long as the ninja system exists there can never be true peace. Power corrupts after all, so what if there was no longer any need for ninja? What would happen then? Minato looked at his son in surprise as he answered. Well, ninja wouldn't be used anymore and they'd just, well, fade. Exactly, Naruto said, grinned like a fox. Thank you, you just gave me the answer I've been looking for, Naruto said as he suddenly grabbed his father and hugged him. Well okay, Minato said as the two pulled away and shrugged. Well, good luck with that, he said to his son. The only problem with it would be getting certain people to help. I'm not sure if Naruto was interrupted by his father putting his hand on his hair and rubbing it slightly. Minato looked at him with a smile, with his hand still on his son's head. You'll define. I believe in you and I always will. Naruto grin turned into a small smile. You really think I can do it? Parents always believe in their children, Minato said with a grin. He brought his hand up to wear the seal on Naruto's stomach. Now, I have to be going, my chakra is fading. I'll restore the seal. You did a good job in finishing it, but you still need to work on controlling it better. I can only do this once. There will be no way to stop you if you lose control again. The seal was returned to normal in a matter of seconds as Naruto grunted in slight pain from the process. Konoha can be rebuilt, and so can the world. Minato smiled at him as he began to fade. I'm proud of you, Naruto, never forget that. He was gone a moment later. Dad, thanks. With closed eyes Naruto's whisper echoed through the now silent room. He opened his eyes again with determination shining brightly in them. Let's go. Fire Country. Shibuku Tensai. Naruto's vertically slitted eyes snapped open as he looked around to see where he was. Hovering over the forest below, he appeared to be standing on a large sphere. A crater covered a quarter of it, however, the part he stood on, which was most likely from his recent usage of the eighth tail. He still wore his coat, however, having learned from the last time he used Kyuubi's chakra that only acid-resistant clothing were capable of surviving anything beyond the third tail. Did he find a way to control the fox's power? No, he just suppressed it, Pain thought as he looked up at the now shaking moon. He strained while holding up his hands, but it was useless. I can't hold Shibuku Tensai. This must be Pain's jutsu, Naruto thought as he felt the ground shake under him. It looks like he can't keep it up, he continued as the moon slowly dropped to the surface below a piece at a time. Oh shit, Naruto growled as the entire moon dropped to the ground and crashed with a monstrous echoing impact. He landed in a crouch on a makeshift hill unharmed. Am I in sage mode? How? It should be depleted. I was out of chakra. Did I recharge it? When? Is he already in sage mode? Pain thought as he caught his breath. He's stronger than I thought. I wanted to test the fox's power, but I never thought he'd be able to destroy Chibaku Tensei. Now I see how Kakuzu and Deidara were defeated by him, the Akatsuki leader thought as he pulled out one of his chakra disruption blades. I thought I was a goner. Katsuyu sighed relief as she climbed out of the coat pocket. What happened? Naruto asked as he looked to the side and saw the gouged out terrain which appeared to be in the direction of where Konoha once stood. You did that in Demon Fox mode, Katsuyu replied, causing his eyes to widen and his breathing to pick up slightly. Did I? Naruto trailed off as he tried to calm himself. No one was hurt by your attacks, though you did appear to have pushed Pain into a corner, Katsuyu reassured him. Everyone is okay. It was pure luck though, the slug finished. Thank God. Tears fell from Naruto's eyes as he smiled relieved. What about Yugito? Is she safe? He asked as he wiped away the tears. Your fox carried her to Tsunade-sama. She was able to heal the damage done to her, Katsuyu answered after a moment of checking with her other bodies. That's good, Naruto said with a small smile. Just wait a little longer Yugito, I'll be there soon, his eyes hardened as he raised his head towards Pain. I think it's about time we finished this Namikaze Naruto, spoke the Akatsuki leader. I believe in you and I always will. Do you understand Pain a little now? If you don't share someone's pain then you can never understand them. But just because you understand them doesn't mean you can come to an agreement. That's the truth, Pain stated as his eyes bore down on him haughtily. Naruto clenched his fist at his side, take me to the real you. I want to speak to him face to face. Pain his sword at his side and spoke, so you figured it out. Naruto nodded, yeah I caught on when you stabbed me with that chakra sword of yours. It's a chakra receiver, you can transfer your chakra into people. Control them, disable them, and destroy them from the inside just like you did to me before. Pain just stood there staring at the blonde with an unreadable expression, you really are something else. It's no wonder that Jiraiya-sensei chose to train you, your partner is really something too, neither of you are normal Jinchuriki. That much is clear, but the time for talking is over, let our actions speak for us. Let me talk to the real you, Naruto said again trying to get the Akatsuki leader to cooperate. Pain ignored his request and said, your Sage mode, it won't save you forever. He's right, I only have one chance to beat him, if Sage mode is depleted then. Naruto shook his head as he saw his opponent charge at him with his chakra disruption blade at the ready. You asked me about peace. I will tell you my answer in person or not at all. He shouted as his sword appeared in his hand in a flash of light. You lose Namikaze Naruto, Pain shouted as he made to stab the blonde. Naruto parried the blow, give up. Can I just say one thing? They clashed with their respective weapons. I don't want to hear it. Pain shouted as he broke through and made to stab the Kitsune Sennin. Shunpo no Jutsu, Naruto thought as he appeared behind Pain in a flash. Futon. Hein, white razor-like blades of wind appeared at the edges of his sword. You should give up. Pain turned swiftly having heard the whisper and raised his own weapon to block the coming attack only to have Naruto slice right through it. Thinking I'm gonna give up. What? Pain's eyes widened as his blade was destroyed. Futon. Rasengan, Naruto called out as he slammed his fist into Pain's face. He flew back from the blow having his face and crashed into the neighboring debris with monstrous force. I got you now Pain. Shinra Tensei was barely able to deflect that last hit, Pain thought as he shakily stood and saw that Naruto had picked up the fallen piece of his blade. What's he doing? He thought as he watched the blonde hold it up to the sky. Chakra Nami, Naruto's flared in a massive column of blue and yellow. Shockwaves rippled across the entire battlefield. They weren't strong enough to do much damage but they did their job, I see you. He's traced my chakra signature. Pain thought with widened eyes as he saw the blonde make a hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 4 clones popped into existence beside him and began to charge 2 separate attacks in each hand. I have to dodge, thought the Akatsuki leader as he heard the distinctive sound a constant ringing bell. Futon. Suin Rasenshuriken, Naruto called out as he twisted his body while holding both of the chakra shurikens. With one in each hand he gave a loud battle cry as he threw the 2 at him one after the other. He can actually control 2 of those monsters at once. Pain thought as he jumped to avoid the first one. He saw the second coming at him and brought his hand up to stop it, Shinra Tensei. The second one was instantly destroyed before it hit him as he landed on a nearby makeshift hill, that was close. He looked down at his opponent and his eyes widened when he saw the blonde had already finished charging 2 wind balls, damn it. Futon. Kamikaze no Jutsu. Naruto's voice echoed through the area as he brought both wind balls together and unleashed the massive tornado it produced at Pain. The Akatsuki leader gritted his teeth as he brought his hands up to stop the attack, Shinra Tensei. Sage mode deactivated. The unstoppable wind met the law of gravity as the 2 attacks sent a cascade of shockwaves across the land. Entire sections of the neighboring forest were blown away by the power the 2 attacks gave off. After the two attacks died down, however, dust covered the area, negating Pain's ability to see. Where is he? Pain thought frantically and heard the bell-like screech he knew all too well. He looked up suddenly and his eyes widened as he saw Naruto was descending towards him with a bright white ball in his hand. 5 seconds. Futon. Rasengan, Naruto said as he swung down with his jutsu. Shinra Tensei, Pain called out, having brought his hand up to stop the blonde. The two clashed with everything they had atop the platform-like pillar of rock that Pain had jumped on. Their attacks sent monstrous shockwaves everywhere. Rocks, boulders around them seemed to just split in two under the extreme pressure that had filled the area. At the very end of this there was an echoing sound of shattering glass as Naruto's jutsu was destroyed and Pain grabbed his arm. "It's over, Namikaze Naruto," Pain told him, only for Naruto to chuckle slightly. "Heh, heh, heh, you fell for it," the blonde said with a grin as he brought his other hand out from behind his back and the jutsu it held. Pain's eyes widened. Those last two attacks were just diversions. Futon. Suin Rasengan, Naruto called out as he planted the spinning ball of wind into the Akatsuki leader's chest. Pain let out an almost deafening cry of pain as the ground below them cracked and crumbled. The attack that hit him seemed to drill into his skin before in one final moment he no longer felt the pain. Pain was blown back at high speeds with the attack still ripping apart his body as he traveled through the air. He hit the ground with monstrous force. The impact shattered all of the neighboring debris, which was soon followed by the sound of a deafening explosion. And with that the Diva Path had been defeated. Naruto hit the ground a moment later and ended up sprawled across the dirt. He was breathing extra hard, having used up everything he had on that last strike. He put everything he had into that last blow and knew if that wasn't enough then nothing would be. He had better be dead after that last hit, Naruto thought as he shakily stood. "Are you all right?" Katsuyu asked, concerned. "I've never been better," Naruto said as he calmed himself down. He slowly made his way over to where Pain had fallen while trying not to drop from exhaustion at any moment. Almost there. He soon found himself standing over the battered and bruised Diva Path. He was still relatively intact but had a large gaping hole in his chest now thanks to Naruto's last attack. Naruto didn't say a word as he removed the numerous chakra receivers the Diva Path had in his body. After the last receiver was taken out, the Kitsune Sennin just stared at Diva's face, thinking over everything that had happened. Naruto closed his eyes and held up one of the chakra receivers, Chakra Nami. His chakra flared again and after a moment he tossed the receiver away. "I need to meet him." "You're really going? You should take reinforcements," Katsuyu said as Naruto put her down on the ground. "No, I'm going alone," Naruto responded and bit his thumb. He made several hand seals and then slammed his open palm into the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu, Sakino no Kitsune. In a poof of smoke Sakino appeared in front of him. "Hey Sakino-chan." "Naruto-kun, did you win?" the fox asked. "That doesn't matter right now. I need a lift," Naruto said as he hefted the Diva Path onto his shoulder. "Where do you need to go?" Sakino asked as her summoner climbed onto her back. "To the top of that mountain," Naruto replied as he pointed at the nearby mountain a little over a mile away. "Fast or slow?" the fox asked him. "Very fast," Naruto told her, and her tails begun to spin behind her at an extreme pace. "I hear you," she told him, and a sonic boom they were off at an incredible speed. "Good luck Naruto-san," Katsuyu whispered seeing him leave. "Naruto has defeated the sixth Pain," Katsuyu informed the assembled group. Everyone immediately snapped their attention to the medium-sized slug with various reactions to the news. "Dobi," Sasuke thought angrily. He did it." Lee practically cheered. "What happened?" Neji asked. "Naruto threw everything he had at Pain and beat him," the slug answered. "Is he all right?" Sakura asked, relieved at the outcome. "He's exhausted but he's otherwise fine," Katsuyu answered based on her observations. "He actually did it," Tsunade said with a small smile gracing her lips. "Where is he now?" Kakashi asked, wanting to know what his former student was doing. Katsuyu answered immediately. "Right now he's head to where the real Pain is hiding." "That's reckless. We have to go after him," Neji spoke up and turned to Guy, who nodded at him. "But he doesn't want any help," Katsuyu said, catching their attention again. "No way. He can't do this alone. He's already weakened," Neji said in disbelief. "That's funny considering you all could barely even touch Pain and Naruto took him down by himself." "Alone?" Yugito smirked at the arrogance the Hyuga Jonin had just displayed. "And what would you know Kumo Nin?" Neji asked, activating his Byakugan. Yugito chose not answer as she stood up a moment later and immediately jumped on Rei's back. "Rei, we need to get to him now." "Very well Yugito Dono," the horse-sized cat nodded and took off towards Katana Mountain before anyone could stop her. Fire Country. Katana Mountain, Conan's hideaway. Atop the mountain towered a tree made of papers which offered protection from forces outside. Sakino stopped just short of it and allowed her summoner to dismount. Naruto nodded to her as he hefted the diva path onto his shoulder again and watched as Sakino disappeared in a poof of smoke a moment later. He set the body down on the ground just and approached the paper tree. In one swift motion he dug his hands inside of it and pulled the papers apart to create an opening. Knock knock. Anyone home? Asked the Kitsune Sennin as he looked inside and spotted two individuals. One appeared to be in some kind of walking chair. Naruto turned a moment later and picked Diva up again before carrying him inside. The hole closed behind him and he approached the two. One was female with blue hair. She stood off to the right but moved in front of the other in the chair as the Kitsune Sennin approached them. Stand back, Konan, the one in the chair spoke. He was clearly male and appeared to have large chakra receivers coming out of his skin. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days either, like he had been starved. All you could see of him was his skin and bone. He appeared frail, like if he were to leave the chair and stand up he would die. Nagato, Konan asked over her shoulder. Are you the real one? Naruto asked the man in the chair. Nagato. Nagato nodded and stared at the blonde. So, peace has arrived, After a bit more staring he asked, do you hate me? Now that you see me before you, will you take your revenge? Will you kill me? For the record, I've killed you 7 times already. Naruto shot back as he dropped Diva at Nagato's feet and Konan picked him up. A moment later, you asked me about peace and I'm here to deliver my answer. My plan is the only way to achieve any sense of peace, Nagato said as a chakra receiver seemed to launch from the chair and struck Naruto in the shoulder. He remained standing however as Nagato continued, your role is to be the sacrifice that will allow me to bring peace to the world. That is the right answer, no other. Naruto grunted in pain from the blow, at this range I can easily control you with my chakra. You shouldn't underestimate me. Naruto shouted at him as he pulled the receiver out and shrugged off Nagato's chakra. How? Nagato asked in thought since no one had ever been able to resist his attack at this range before. That's when he caught sight of the boy's eyes. They were still slitted like we're normally in Sage mode but there was a red line around the eye's natural blue color. He's using both his Sage mode and Kyuubi's chakra at the same time. Impossible. The concentration needed to perform such a task is ridiculous bordering on ludicrous. I came here to talk you, to give you my answer but, I also wanted to find out what I would feel if I really saw you, Naruto said looking down and shaking slightly. You wanted to, Nagato asked with widened eyes. I really want to kill you, Naruto answered as killing intent flooded the room. They just stood there for a moment staring at one another. I want to kill you so much I'm trembling. For what you did to Ero Sennin, for what you did to Konoha, for what you did to Yugito. You can't forgive me, you're only human after all, Nagato said as his eyes seemed to soften slightly. Sage mode deactivated. Yeah but, Ero Sennin he said the day would come when people would truly understand each other. He had faith. You have none, Naruto said as his eyes returned to normal and he set his Sage mode on recharge. It's too late for Jiraiya's idealism now, that's just not realistic. You are working for your own justice and that's fine. You're not God but, can you really believe Jiraiya's nonsense after seeing the reality? Nagato asked him. Naruto shook his head. When I found out you were his student there was something I really wanted to ask you. If you were his student then how did you turn out like this? I mean Ero Sennin had other students. One was my father and I know for a fact he did everything within his power to protect people no matter who they were. How did you end up like this? I want to hear your side of the story before I give you my answer. All right, I'll tell you of our pain, Nagato said with a sigh. Konan looked over at him and spoke. Nagato, that's just a waste of time. Just hurry up and, wait Konan, I want to hear his answer, Nagato interrupted. He closed his eyes as he spoke to Naruto. I have 2 sources of pain. One is my parents' death. It was in the midst of the Second Great Shinobi War. 2 Konoha shinobi came into our home one day looking for food. They didn't know anyone was in and we hid from them. We were afraid that they might kill us. When we tried to sneak away I knocked over a vase by accident and it alerted the Konoha nins to our presence. They thought we're their enemy and tried to kill us. Father tried to hold them off but I see, Naruto nodded in understanding. That's when my Rinnegan awakened. I slaughtered the 2 Konoha nins in a daze. I didn't even know what happened until the next morning. My mother and father died for a war Konoha started. I can never forget the pain of that day, it still hurts even now. As the pain turned to hatred, my powers bloomed within me. Later I would realize that it was I that had killed those Konoha nins. I buried my parents at the nearby graveyard. Even ninja respect the dead so I knew they wouldn't be disturbed. I said my goodbyes and left home alone with only a few provisions, enough to keep me alive for a day or two. I traveled around and asked for some food from the neighbors but they couldn't spare any food. I soon grew hungry and came across a dog that wouldn't stop following me. I called him Tiny and we kept traveling, but I knew we couldn't last much longer. That's when Konan saved me. She saved us, Nagato said as he turned to the other Akatsuki member and she smiled sadly at him. I offered him some bread. He split it between him and Tiny. After that I took them to the hideout that Yahiko and I used, Konan continued. Who's Yahiko? Naruto asked, having never heard of the man. Konan looked down at Diva and replied. This Diva path was constructed using Yahiko's corpse. That's Yahiko. Naruto trailed off as he stared at Diva's lifeless form. Yes, he is. Back then is when we first met. We were all war orphans, but they were trying desperately to stay alive. They became my friends. We stole a lot in order to survive. There were no orphanages in a small war-torn country like ours. There was nothing else kids like us could do. But through it all, Yahiko never gave up hope. He wanted to rule the world and bring peace to it in order to stop war. Not long after he told us that we were caught up in a fight. A kunai with an explosive tag detonated right in front of us. Tiny was. Nagato shook his head, remembering his first friend. He died, Naruto said, looking to the side. Yes, the ones fighting, however, it was Jiraiya and them, the Sannin. They were fighting Hanzo, the former leader of a Megakure. Afterwards we set out trying to find some ninja in hopes of getting some training and becoming stronger so we could stop bad things from happening to those we care about again. That's when we found him, Jiraiya. I couldn't accept any Konoha nins. You should understand that. He saw Naruto nod slightly, so he continued. Jiraiya, however, was different. Not long after the four of us began living together, something happened. What happened? Naruto asked, wanting to know. A lone ninja attacked us. He nearly killed Yahiko, but I fought back. I did it unconsciously. Apparently I had some special power. It was the Rinnegan. Afterwards Jiraiya began teaching us ninjutsu. He wasn't keen on teaching us those before but decided to anyways. He said they were for self-defense, but I think they were mainly a way for me to control the Rinnegan. I was scared of my own powers back then. I was filled with hatred. I was tormented by guilt and kept thinking that I had done something wrong. He saved me, and without realizing it I came to accept him. However, despite this he could never discover the answer to eliminating hatred and pain. Not like us, but I knew the answer right away. I just wanted to protect those close to me no matter how much pain is caused. Nagato paused, letting Naruto assimilate everything he had said. You wanted to protect your precious people, Naruto said softly, remembering the words of his first real friend. Do you have someone precious to you? After 3 years of training we'd grown stronger in body and mind, but his words stayed within my heart. He said he felt that my Rinnegan could be the answer. He felt that I was the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths, the founder of the shinobi world. Jiraiya entrusted me with that piece and then left us. Yahiko became our leader soon after, and our gang grew famous overnight. Everyone agreed with our desire to create peace without relying on brute force, but the world was still the middle of a war between the three great powers, Iwa, Suna and Konoha. Hanzo, the leader of a Megakure, heard the rumors about us, and since he could no longer ignore us, wanted to use us to begin peace negotiations between the three great nations. But that was a catastrophe. We were just children. Nagato's fists clenched in anger. What happened? Naruto asked, concerned. Because of him Yahiko died. It was a trap. Hanzo was afraid we'd wrestle control of a Megakure away from him and so decided to eliminate us. The next day when we arrived at the assigned place, Konoha's Black Ops were waiting for us along with Hanzo and his minions. Hanzo had joined forces with Konoha's Danzo to destroy us. Danzo wanted Hanzo's help in becoming Hokage and Hanzo wanted Danzo's help in protecting his position. Hanzo held Konan hostage and told me kill Yahiko or he would kill her. Yahiko was killed by me a few seconds later, and that is the second source of pain I have. I thought I had grown up, but nothing had changed. It was just the same as when my parents had died. I realized that the answer I had was worthless. I managed to free Konan and wreak havoc on the Konoha and AIM forces. Yahiko was dead though, and after that I became the leader of our gang in his stead. I lost many friends in battle after that, so many people just kept dying. People in the larger countries talk about peace, yet they hypocritically fund wars. Their peace is built on the sacrifices of the smaller countries. Your peace is violence towards us. There can never be true peace in this cursed land. What Jiraiya spoke of was nothing more than a fantasy. You've heard my story, so let me hear your answer, Nagato finished. What you said may be true. I think you're right, Naruto whispered, looking down, having heard everything he needed to. He put his hand in his coat and pulled out a small book that Nagato seemed to recognize, however. Konan looked on, confused, not recognizing it but clearly seeing the effect it was having on Nagato. If you recognize this, then you also know it is another path for you to take. All you have to do is believe. I refuse, Nagato said instantly, having not taken his eyes off of the book in Naruto's hand. How can I believe Jiraiya now? That book doesn't mean anything. There's no such thing as real peace. It's impossible as long as we're living in this accursed world. Then, I will break the curse. If there's such a thing as peace, I will find it. I won't give up. I already know how I'm going to try and do it, Naruto told him. Nagato trailed off surprised. What's wrong, Nagato? Conan asked worried. My answer is this. I will unite the world under one banner. One country, one military, one ruler, one lord, Naruto told him, making both him and Conan go wide-eyed. My plan is to bring all of the nations together, unite them all and then completely obliterate the ninja system from existence, he continued. You're going to try and erase everything the Sage of Six Paths set out to do? Nagato asked as he stared at the blonde. Naruto nodded. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. If I destroy all records of ninja, erase their entire existence from history, then only civilians and the samurai would remain. This would stabilize the region, right? Nagato nodded in response. Yes, it would, but to pull off something like that you would need the cooperation of every country. Naruto smiled at that. Yeah, I guess I've got my work cut out for me, huh? Nagato trailed off. Believe in me and I promise you, I'll bring peace to Omegakure too, Naruto told him. We studied under the same teacher. I told you before that we should be able to understand each other. I was just joking back then, but you're an odd kid. You remind me of myself when I was younger. You're different. You chose a different path and in you I can see a different future. I will believe in you, Namikaze Naruto, Nagato said, chuckling slightly. Nagato, Conan asked, confused slightly. It's over, Conan. My body is at its limit. I will be dead in minutes, Nagato told her before he turned back to Naruto. Listen carefully, Naruto. There is someone you must watch out for. He is a very powerful shinobi. He is almost without equal, he told the blonde. Naruto nodded. I already know. The Akatsuki member. The one with the mask, he said, surprising the two. Nagato nodded slowly. His name is Uchiha Madara and he is the Sandaime Mizukage. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. Okay, that I did not know. He was defeated by the last Sanbi Jinchuriki, Hyuga, Nagato told him. Naruto looked up at him surprised. Jinchuriki. How did Madara lose? From what I'm told, not even my parents were able to beat that guy. Hyuga had full control over his Biju. He was able to use it to defeat Madara and became the Yondaime Mizukage nearly 12 years ago, Nagato stated. Naruto looked at the ground trying to process what he had just heard. The Yondaime Mizukage, is he? He's dead. He was killed by Madara in their second battle at the Lake of the Bloody Mist where the Sanbi then resided until Akatsuki captured it, Nagato interrupted him. I see, Naruto said barely above a whisper. Nagato. Conan trailed off as she looked at him. War brings death, and wounds and pain to both sides. There's nothing harder to accept than the deaths of those you love, so you believe that they could never die, especially those who haven't known war, like your generation. You try to find meaning in death, but there's only pain and hatred that you don't know what to do with. Nagato began to rasp out, feeling his body shutting down. I know, Naruto told him. Dying like trash, never-ending hatred, pain that never heals, that is war, that is what you must face, Naruto, that book and you, it's like someone set this all up, or maybe this is the hand of a real god. Nagato trailed off as he closed his eyes and the paper tree around them slowly began to fall apart, revealing the sunlight. Continue on, and bring this world true peace. His shoulders slumped as he trailed off and his breathing stopped. Conan wiped away the tears which were now freely falling from her eyes, having lost yet another close friend. She too sent the papers she controlled to engulf Nagato and pull him out of the chair. He was completely covered with papers and hovering beside her now as she soon did the same to Yahiko as well. You're taking them, right? Naruto asked her as he looked over at her. She nodded. Yes, I will give them the funeral they deserve. What about you? I don't want to think you'd just return to Akatsuki, Naruto trailed off. Conan shook her head. I'm through with Akatsuki. Yahiko and Nagato were everything to me. They entrusted their dreams to you. Nagato believed in you and I will too. Omegakure will help you make that dream come true. Naruto nodded with a smile. Thank you. He turned away from her and made a hand seal. I suggest you leave while you can. I'm erasing all traces of your presence from the area. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Conan nodded as two clones popped into existence beside him. Until we meet again, Naruto. She took off a moment later with the bodies of her two closest friends. Sage mode reactivated. Here we go. Stage 6, Naruto whispered as he held out his hand and the clones began charging his new jutsu. This particular jutsu required all of his chakra reserves while in Sage mode. It was a one-shot kill move and the true jutsu designed by Namikaze Minato. He could only do it once per charge and even then he would be left exhausted afterwards, but he knew the situation called for it. Futon. Rasenkamikas. Fire Country. Battlefield. They certainly covered quite the distance. Shino commented as the group of Konoha nin, Tsunade included, followed the large number of craters and canyons that littered the area, including the large amount of earth that had seemed to be ripped from the ground and tossed into the air. Yeah, but where did they go? Tenten asked as she looked around. The nearby mountain was suddenly engulfed in a spinning ball of wind. The ball seemed to be pulling various trees into it and shredding them upon contact. Wow, Hyuga exclaimed as he tried to stop himself from being pulled in. The others weren't faring much better. What the hell is that? More importantly, how do we stop it? Tenten shouted over the raging winds. I know what it is. It's the Rasengan's completed form. Kakashi shouted as he used chakra to stick to the ground and covered his eyes. You mean that's Naruto? Sakura asked in a shout. The ball suddenly exploded with great force, sending a massive blast of wind in all directions and wiping out an entire forest of trees. It all went silent after the few seconds it took for it to die down. When the dust cleared, the mountain was no longer there. It was just a large crater in the earth with the surrounding forest having been leveled. Okay. What the hell just happened? Hyuga asked, catching his breath. He finished it. Kakashi trailed off as he remembered his sensei trying to complete this particular jutsu. We need to hurry, Tsunade told them, and they took off again. Naruto, Yugito shouted as she walked through the forest at the edge of the mountain's crater. I'm here, she heard the whisper and turned to find the one she loved slowly walking towards her with battered cloths. His coat was torn at its edges and he had numerous cuts littering his body, but overall he looked fine if a little exhausted. He fell forward and she caught him as he fell before hugging him closely. Naruto trailed off as his exhaustion slowly overtaking him. I promise I'll always protect you and I will never break a promise. He slumped as unconsciousness finally overtook him. Yugito just smiled cheerfully. You reckless idiot. She motioned for Rei to approach her. Let's go home. I'm afraid we can't let you do that. The Neko Sennin turned swiftly upon hearing the newcomer's voice. 12 figures dropped down around her, including the Hokage whom she recognized. There's no room to escape, and with Naruto knocked out he can't shunpo us out of here, Yugito growled in thought as she saw that she was surrounded. We have them, Neji stated. Naruto, Sakura thought as she gazed on the unconscious form of her former teammate. Standing atop a nearby branch was a man wearing an Akatsuki cloak with an orange spiral mask. He was looking down at the scene before him with numerous thoughts running through his head, mostly on what had happened recently. Sasuke had been returned to Konoha by those two Sennin brats. Naruto and Yugito had defeated Kakuzu, Hidan, Deidara and now Pain, which even though he had taken into account the outcome, it was not something he had wanted. Itachi's death was in all honesty the only thing he had actually wanted to happen. Zetsu's death by Sasuke's hand and Konan's defection were not planned for. Those two brats, Madara growled in thought as he looked on as the pair were taken in by Konoha. They've thrown quite the wrench into my plans. I think it is about time for me to return to Kiridakure no Sato, he thought before turning away and disappearing in the blink of an eye. Fire Country. Hokage Monument, Secondary Council Chamber. You want to what? Tsunade asked in a barely controlled shout. The demon must be executed for its actions, said one Haruno Shiki. It took every ounce of control Tsunade had not to pummel the civilian council head where she stood. He is a Nukenin and must be dealt with accordingly. He saved us from pain and you want to kill him? Tsunade asked ludicrously. She had expected the council to let Naruto back in after the whole attack had passed, but she never expected this. Why? If it wasn't for that demon, then we wouldn't have been attacked in the first place. Shiki shouted in anger, causing the room to go silent. She continued after a moment of silence. That demon has caused us many problems lately and must be dealt with. His whore is to be executed too, publicly, so as to show that we do not stand for traitors. Naruto is not a traitor or a demon, or did you miss the fact that the Kyuubi was there during the battle? Tsunade shot back. Thank you for bringing that detail up. The crime of releasing the Kyuubi must be added to the list of charges as well, the civilian head told her with smirk. That is not going to happen, Tsunade said in finality, only for Shiki's smirk to widen. We already have the daimyo's consent, Tsunade-sama. You have no say in the matter. The two young Sennin will be executed tomorrow at noon. Danzo spoke up from his seat in the elder section. There is simply nothing you can do. How did you manage to do that, Danzo? Tsunade narrowed her eyes at the old war hawk. You can't just kill them. The problems caused from killing them are impossible to predict. That girl is the Raikage's granddaughter, for crying out loud. Do you really think Kuma will take her death lying down? Are you willing to risk open war between Konoha and Kumo over wanting to hurt Naruto? Kumo are irrelevant. The demons will be executed and that is all there is to it, Shiki said in finality as the entire civilian council stood as one and left the room a moment later. The elder council followed soon after, with an angered shinobi council following them a few seconds later. Tsunade was left in the chamber alone with her shoulders slumped and hundreds of thoughts passing through her mind as she tried to understand where everything had gone wrong. She remembered how things were before Team Yamato went to retrieve the younger Uchiha at the time and how she should have done more to stop Naruto's exile. It didn't matter anymore though. As Hokage she wouldn't stand for it though, not anymore. She was going to do something about this whole situation, something she prayed never to be forced to do, but she had no choice now. She left the room a moment later and found her assistant, Shizune. She said, catching the young woman's attention, "Gather all of the shinobi of Konoha from every rank. Everyone but those from Root, and have them in my new office within an hour." Shizune nodded in understand. "May I ask what this is about?" "I'm going to do something that Sarutobi-sensei was too afraid to do," was all the blonde Hokage said as she turned to leave. Lightning Country. Raikage's office. "They're going to what?" shouted the Raikage in anger. His assistant and bodyguard, not that he needed one, she answered immediately. "Konoha appears to have captured Yugito-sama and Namikaze-sama. They've been sentenced to execution by the Konoha Council and the Fire Daimyo." That stupid kid, what was he thinking going after Akatsuki? Especially in Konoha of all places. "I sent Yugito with him so she could get stronger, not to fight Akatsuki every chance they got," the Raikage shook in anger. He turned to the team that had gathered in his office and said, "Team Samui. I have a mission for you. S rank, infiltrate Konoha and get those two out of there before the execution. There's not enough time. We'll barely be at the border when the execution takes place," Karui told him as she looked over the time of the execution. "Find the time, damn it," the Raikage shouted. "Go. Fire Country. Hokage Monument prison area." Pain was all he knew. He was plagued by it, but he also felt clarity for the first time in his life. He knew what he had to do. His promises had been kept and he had defeated pain. He had defeated Nagato in more ways than one. He had a mission now, a path to follow, an answer. He groaned as he opened his eyes and proceeded to tiredly sit up. He noticed he was in a prison cell with Yugito in the cell on the other side of the corridor from him. "Naruto?" she asked as she saw him shakily stand. "Hey Yugito." He grinned weakly and was about to move to grab the bars. "Don't bother trying to destroy the bars. They've got a lightning seal on it. It will shock you if you touch the bars, and there are chakra suppression seals covering the entire prison, so we can't use any jutsu to escape," Yugito told him, stopping his hand from touching the bars. "Great," Naruto grumbled as he sat back down against the far wall. Naruto?" Yugito asked after a moment of silence. "Yes Yugito," he asked as he looked up at her. About what I said back when we were fighting Akatsuki," she trailed off, not know what to say. Naruto nodded and smiled at her. "I know, I love you too." Her eyes widened slightly before she smiled. Not the cat smile she usually used either. "I guess I always have." "You," he smiled as she felt her cheeks heat up at his words. "Idiot," she chuckled, bordering on giggling. Naruto laughed lightly. "You say that way too often." "Well, it's true," she shot back in amusement. "Tell me about it," he said as he leaned back against the wall. "What do you think they'll do to us?" Yugito asked, changing the subject. Naruto remained quiet for a moment before answering, "I don't know really." I'm scared Naruto." He looked up surprised at hearing those words from her. "I don't know what will happen. I've been told about torture and everything before, but It will be fine." Naruto interrupted her self-destructive thoughts with a reassuring smile. "We'll get through this Yugito. Trust me," he told her. She nodded and fell silent a moment later. Well, what do we have here?" The two snapped their eyes to the door at the end of the corridor. Two figures stepped into sight. Both wore Anbu uniforms, but they had root insignia emblazoned on their shoulders, two demons. "Who are you pricks?" Naruto demanded, standing up. The first root looked at his partner and said, "We must be quick about this, Fudono. Danzo-sama's plan will start soon." The second root. Fu nodded slightly in understand. "I am aware of that, Torundono. This will not take long." "Hey, what are you doing?" Naruto asked in a yell as the two roots ripped off the lightning seal on Yugito's prison cell and opened the gate door. "Come here, demon. We need something from you and you should cooperate," Fu told her as he took a step inside and drew a pair of kunai. "Stay away from me," Yugito shouted as she stepped back against the far wall. "Leave her alone," Naruto yelled and was forced to stop himself from touching the bars of his own cell. Just as Fu grabs her, he suddenly felt a searing pain in his chest. What? He looked down, seeing a cackling fist of lightning seemingly erupting from his chest. "Reikiri." A voice whispered from behind the root Anbu member, "Your future is death." Fu fell forward and dropped to the floor dead. "I told you." "Who or why?" Torun began, only to be kicked into a wall. "Who I am is of no concern to you," the shadowy figure told him as a medium-sized dog of pure electricity shot out of his hand and hit the root Anbu member and killed him instantly. It was then that Naruto and Yugito got a good glimpse of the man that had intervened. It was the Kitsune Sennin's former sensei, Hatake Kakashi. He wasn't wearing his usual outfit though. He was wearing his Anbu-style outfit with a short sword at his side like a samurai and a large scroll on his back. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto asked, surprised at seeing him there. Kakashi nodded and removed the lightning seal on Naruto's cell. Sorry I'm late. I got lost at the entrance. The directions I was given were terrible. It was just like him to make up a bad excuse at a time like this. What are you doing here? Naruto asked as he tore open the gate door to his cell and exited it. The council wants you dead. Hokage-sama wouldn't stand for it, and neither will anyone else in the shinobi population. Remember Danzo? The copy nin began and Naruto nodded. Well, he predicted how Tsunade-sama would react and has started his own little uprising, he explained. Are you saying Konoha is in the middle of a civil war now? Yugito asked him, surprised. Kakashi nodded. Yes, Danzo's root forces are everywhere. I had to kill 17 of them just to get here. They're like bugs. There are hundreds of them. Hokage-sama and the rest of the Konoha nins under her command that are still in the area are fighting them right now. You're serious? Naruto asked, not believing what he was being told. Dead serious, Kakashi told him grimly and dropped the large scroll on his back onto the floor. So serious in fact that neither Hokage-sama nor I can trust this scroll to remain in Konoha. Just in case Danzo wins, I want you to take it and run, he stated as he slid the scroll towards the Kitsune Sennin. Naruto crouched down and examined the scroll. This is the Forbidden Scroll of Sealing. Inside is every jutsu Konoha has collected, including your father's Hiraishin no Jutsu, the copy nin told him with a nod. Naruto looked up confused. Why are you? Do you remember back during the Chunin exams when you were a genin? Kakashi asked him with a smile under his mask. When Naruto nodded, he continued, I decided to train Sasuke and left you with Ebisu-san. I knew you didn't like it and you thought I was playing favorites, right? Naruto nodded again as his fists clenched. I never told you the real reason I did that, did I? Naruto looked up at him and narrowed his eyes. What reason? Kakashi chuckled before answering. I didn't train you back then because I didn't think you needed it. In all honesty, I knew you would beat Neji without my help. Hell, I thought you were going to win the entire tournament back then. You probably would have if Orochimaru's invasion didn't start. From what I'm told and from what I saw when you challenged Sasuke, your progression rate was and still is second to none. You knew I was going to beat Neji. Naruto asked, confused. I believed you would. I truly believe you are the only one that can surpass the Yondaime Hokage, Kakashi told him, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. The copy nin chuckled again at the reaction he got. Once you leave here I doubt we'll ever meet again, so I just wanted to tell you that. Suddenly footsteps began to echo through the corridor and they all turned in the direction of the source. I think it's about time you both left. Stop the demons. They're escaping, shouted the lead root Anbu as 7 of them came around the corner. Go. Get out of here. I'll hold them off. Kakashi waved the 2 Sennin to leave. Come on, idiot. We have to move, Yugito shouted as Naruto picked up the Forbidden Scroll. Goodbye, sensei. Naruto nodded at his fist sensei and turned to his fellow Sennin. Let's go. The 2 bolted down the corridor away from Kakashi and the squad of root Anbu. Reikiri, a distant voice called out behind them as they left. Naruto strapped the scroll onto his back just like Jiraiya used to do with the Toad Summoning Scroll and increased his speed. Yugito was with him every step of the way as they dashed through the numerous corridors of the prison complex. So, have you got an escape plan? Asked the Neko Sennin. I thought I'd try blasting my way out. You know, mix things up a little, Naruto said back with a grin. Note. Yes, I know, Master Chief. Halo 3. Sage mode activated. The 2 assumed their most powerful forms as they raced towards the light at the end of the corridor that clearly led to surface. Only to stop as they spotted someone standing at end of the tunnel. Naruto recognized her immediately, Sakura-chan. Yugito looked between the 2 and as they both stared at each other, who was she? For Haruno Sakura, however, she couldn't help but be assaulted by a specific memory as she gazed upon her former teammate. Flashback no jutsu begin. You can't understand, Itachi said in a condescending tone. I can't tell you everything, there is no time for that. All you need to know is everything Sasuke has done has been for nothing and he still has a chance to redeem himself should he choose to. What do you mean? Sakura asked, confused. If Sasuke chooses not to redeem himself, then he will attack Konoha and kill everyone in it, Itachi stated, causing the pink-haired Kunoichi's eyes to widen. Can you kill him if need be? He wouldn't do something like that, Sakura said, shaking her head. Then you clearly do not know him, the Uchiha said in a condescending tone. Naruto-kun does not need redeeming. Konoha was in the wrong for what they did to him. Konoha's made some mistakes in the past, but Sakura tried to defend but was cut off. A lot of crimes have been committed for the good of Konoha since its founding. Naruto-kun's exile is just another thing added onto a very long list of crimes done by the village. Itachi interrupted. If Naruto-kun were to return to Konoha he would be executed for the good of Konoha, just like me. He's nothing like you, Sakura snarled. Oh, Itachi raised an eyebrow and smirked. I believe you are mistaken. Despite Konoha's attempts at controlling him and his strength, Naruto-kun has grew much more powerful in such a short amount of time, just like I did at his age. The Uchiha's features returned to normal as he asked, what would you do if Naruto-kun were to be captured by Konoha and sentenced to death? Surely you realize that is what will happen should he ever be captured by Konoha. Konoha wouldn't. What would you do? Itachi asked again, cutting her off. Sakura gulped and looked away. I don't know. I pray you find the answer, because if you do not then Konoha will burn and everything I have worked for will have been for nothing, Itachi told her. Flashback no jutsu end. Hey, Sakura said lamely. Naruto looked at her confused. Sakura, what are you? The pink-haired Chunin stepped to the side and smiled at him with tears forming in her eyes. I'm sorry for all of the pain I've caused you. You deserve better. Someone once asked me what I would do if Konoha ever caught you. I didn't know the answer at the time, but I do now. Sakura. Naruto trailed off as she gestured towards the exit. I won't stop you, she told him. Naruto closed his eyes for a second before he nodded with a smile. Thank you. He dashed forward once again with Yugito by his side and passed Sakura within moments. Take care of him, Sakura whispered as Yugito passed her. I will, the Neko Sennin whispered back as she ran.